Now we're going to discuss muscle tissue. There are only 3 different types of muscle tissue: skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle, and smooth muscle. Some of them share a few things in common, so we'll be sure to point out ways that you can distinguish between the 3. So first of all, you have skeletal muscles. These muscle fibers, that we call them, are long and cylindrical. They kind of look like straws. They are multinucleated, which is sometimes really hard to see, and so it's good to know, but it's not really easy to identify visually. They are striated, so striated means they have a striped appearance, so they're kind of striped straws. And the contractions that you get from skeletal muscle, it's voluntary, so you get to decide when you move your skeletal muscles. Okay. Now, cardiac muscles, these are shorter and they are branched, and so you can see in our image here, we've got all these branch points. These are uninucleated, which again, it's good to know that, but up here, you couldn't really tell that these skeletal muscles were multinucleated anyway. So that doesn't really look a whole lot different. These are also striated, and so that is a similarity between cardiac and skeletal muscles. But here's what's unique about cardiac muscle: intercalated discs. So intercalated discs are these little lines, these little squiggly lines. And notice that we did not have intercalated discs in skeletal muscles. These are pretty easy to identify on the real tissues themselves. And again, notice that we don't have that in the skeletal muscles. So that's really what you're looking for. If it's striped, you've narrowed it down to 2. It's either skeletal or cardiac. If you see these intercalated discs, it's cardiac muscle every time. Cardiac muscle is involuntarily contracted muscle, which is kind of nice because you don't have to actively think about making your heart beat. It just does it for you. And then we have smooth muscle. Smooth muscle is smooth because it does not have striations. It's non-striated. Smooth muscle is also uninucleated like cardiac muscle, so that is a similarity there. Smooth muscle is also involuntary like cardiac muscle, so that's a similarity. But again, the smooth muscle, we're noticing the smooth muscle, we're identifying it because it has no stripes, it has no striations. And these spindle-shaped cells, what does that mean? It means they're kind of thicker in the middle and they get skinnier out to the sides. And these nuclei are pretty prominent. They're pretty good sized. So let's look at each one. Let's see. All right, so smooth muscle first. Again, no striations. Sometimes they will have a nice symmetrical appearance. If you looked at this picture, that's not quite so symmetrical. But what we are not going to confuse this with, we're not going to confuse this with dense regular connective tissue, which was very wavy. There's really not a whole lot of wave to this. And again, these nuclei are very prominent and they're very large. Okay, so kind of do your best to keep those straight. Cardiac muscle, we've got the intercalated discs that we're going to take note of. We can also see the striations, the stripes here. It's a little difficult to tell that these are branched cells, but all of this extra space that you see is from those branch points. But those intercalated discs, that's our giveaway that this is cardiac muscle, because skeletal muscles just don't have that. Okay, so these are our nice long cylindrical muscle fibers with the striations. Okay, but there are no intercalated discs. There's also no branching. Okay, you don't see any branching in here. This is a little easier to notice all the multiple nuclei. Okay, so that's kind of apparent here, but that won't necessarily always be the case. So if you see stripes, you're looking to see, does it have intercalated discs or does it not? That's our difference there. Last but not least, we have nervous tissue. You will be happy to know that there is only one type of nervous tissue. It's just nervous tissue. There are a few extra things within the nervous tissue that we would like you to be able to identify. We would like you to be able to identify the neurons, which are the large cells, and then the neural glial cells, which are all these little small dots, all these little tinier cells. And then that's about it. We would like you to know that the neurons themselves, besides the fact that they're very large, they usually either have more of a pyramid or more of a star-shaped. They're pretty easy to recognize. And then if you look at your lab list, you may be asked to identify the cell body, which is just the large portion of the neuron, the nucleus, and then we do want you to know the neuroglial cells themselves and things like that. So just make sure you check your lab list to make sure you know whether or not you need to learn a couple of these additional words or not. But students usually don't have trouble recognizing neural tissue because there's only one type. And that concludes our discussion on muscle and nervous tissue.